I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Scott Sinclair, for the two of us to chat for a few minutes about our key takeaways from the NetApp Insight event that took place last week. Now, the first thing before I ask Scott for his thoughts is I've got to give props to NetApp. This was a fabulous digital event. It was actually enjoyable, and I can't say that's necessarily true of the myriad of these that we have to sit through. Obviously, enjoyment isn't the only point. I mean, there has to be some meat there. NetApp was very determined to restate and emphasize its role as, quote, the cloud storage specialists, end quote. Did they do that, Scott?
I think they did. I think there's a lot to unpack here, and a lot more that expands, beyond just storage. So if I kind of think about some of maybe like the top three things that were announced at Insight this year. They announced for SolidFire, they have a software-defined version, which is nice, greater flexibility, more deployment options. IT organizations are moving in that direction. They also announced updates to NetApp Keystone Flex subscription, which is a really fascinating, very valuable pay-as-you-go model. We see more and more organizations moving in this direction to have a cloud-like consumption. At the end of the day, IT is getting really difficult to try to predict what your infrastructure will need 3-4 years ago with new apps. And this gets us a lot closer to that set it and forget it infrastructure, because you can just pay for what you need. So you can, really get some budget relief early on. And then as your environment grows, you can go with it. But thirdly, I think one of the really fascinating things that they announced that I want to talk about was the concept of storageless. Now, this is self-managing container-aware storage, and it's based on technology that NetApp acquired with its Spot acquisition. And so what Spot does is Spot leverages machine learning to better understand what the application is doing in real time, and then tune the infrastructure based on those needs. Now, they have some capabilities to do that within serverless. And at Insight this year, they announced storageless, which is basically the same concept, but applied to storage infrastructure. If you think about where we're going within IT environments and enabling digital initiatives, enabling developers, IT was already moving too slow. You can't submit a trouble ticket for these new application development initiatives. But at the same time, you can't just let your developers run wild with the credit card and cloud services. So having tools that help you better understand what your apps are doing and self-tune the infrastructure is really fascinating. I think this is a really interesting space to watch over the next coming years.
I was really struck, by the fact that they had not just someone and not just mentions, but actual leaders from Microsoft, IBM, AWS and Google all as part of the event. So if they want to talk about being something to do with storage or storageless and something to do with the cloud, that seemed to me to be, just a fabulous way to achieve that. Quite honestly, those individuals could have read the phone book. It was their presence that mattered, because you don't see that happen with everyone. But I want to talk about just a delightful moment, but I also think it's a great metaphor for everything going on here. Bit of a stretch, but a bit of fun too, which is exactly what NetApp was doing. At one point, George Kurian, obviously the leader at NetApp, was interviewing Thomas Kurian, Google Cloud. And because they are identical twins, their mother came along to tell us which was which. A, that was charming. But B, actually, I think it's a metaphor for what's going on here, because to be honest, she told us which was which. I don't know which was which. And really, that actually is a good analogy or metaphor, whatever, for what's going on with NetApp. Because really, they could have swapped seats, but they told the same story. And for your data and wherever you're putting it, anywhere, that speaks, no pun intended, volumes. So, looking at the big picture, they did a great job of pulling everything together. I like all the added improvements that you talked about as well.
If you look at this from the high level, if an IT leader or someone came into this event, someone came into NetApp Insight thinking NetApp was just a storage company, I think they left thinking, wow, there's a lot more here. And NetApp, the company's on a great trajectory. It's more than just storage. You could even argue with things like Spot, it's more than just cloud. They're doing a lot of amazing things, and definitely something to pay attention to moving forward.